I'm Emily, 27, and standing in my childhood kitchen watching my father throw me out like yesterday's garbage. Pack your things and get out. Go beg on the streets, he spits, his face twisted with disgust. My mother's eyes are glued to the floor. My siblings are actually laughing. And here I am, the family disappointment, getting the boot on Thanksgiving. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt completely invisible in your own family. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. But let me back up and tell you how I got to this beautiful family moment. See, I've always been the middle child nobody quite knew what to do with. While my older brother Mark became this hotshot lawyer everyone brags about, and my sister Sarah collected nursing awards like Pokemon cards, I was just Emily, the one who doesn't know what she wants, the one who gives everyone headaches. You know, real supportive family energy. When I decided to study in New York 3 years ago, the family chorus was unanimous. That's way too expensive. You're trying to be something you're not. Why can't you just stay local like normal people? Normal people. Because apparently dreaming bigger than our small Pennsylvania town made me abnormal. The first few months in NYC were brutal. I'm talking ramen for breakfast brutal. Working 2 jobs, sleeping on a friend's couch, wondering if maybe they were right about me being unrealistic. And every time I called home asking for help, which I hated doing, it was the same lecture about how I'd bitten off more than I could chew. We're tired of supporting your fantasy, Mark would say during family calls. Fantasy. Like wanting an education was equivalent to believing in unicorns. My parents would send me these tiny amounts of money, but always with a lecture attached. This is the last time. You need to learn to stand on your own. Maybe it's time to come home and face reality. The money came with so many strings attached, I felt like a marionette. What they didn't know was that their constant reminders that I was a burden became rocket fuel. Every snide comment, every eye roll, every time they made me feel like I was asking for too much. It all went into this little fire inside me that just kept growing. I threw myself into my studies like my life depended on it. Computer science, cybersecurity, anything tech-related. While my roommates were out partying, I was teaching myself coding languages. While they were sleeping in on weekends, I was working at a campus coffee shop and doing freelance web design. Something clicked for me around my sophomore year. I started noticing how many small businesses had terrible digital security. Like, frighteningly bad. I'm talking passwords like password 123 and no backup systems. It was like watching people leave their front doors wide open with a sign that says, "Rob me." So I started offering basic security consultations. Just small stuff at first. Helping restaurants secure their payment systems. Setting up proper firewalls for local shops. Word spread faster than I expected. Turns out, when you actually solve people's problems instead of just taking their money, they tell their friends. By my junior year, I wasn't just freelancing anymore. I had incorporated Carter Digital Security. Yeah, I used my own last name because apparently I'm shameless like that. The company started small, but we were growing fast, really fast. The beauty of tech is that nobody cares how old you are or where you came from if you can deliver results. When a major retail chain got hacked and lost customer data, guess who they called to fix their mess and prevent it from happening again? This nobody from Pennsylvania who supposedly didn't know what she wanted from life. But here's the thing. I never told my family about any of it. Why would I? They'd already made it crystal clear that my dreams were too big for someone like me. So I just let them keep thinking I was this struggling student barely making ends meet. Meanwhile, I was quietly building something that would change everything. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was worth more money than my entire extended family combined. Yet here I was, driving my beat-up Honda to Pennsylvania for Thanksgiving, like some college kid coming home for free food. Well, technically it was free food. I just happened to be able to buy the restaurant if I wanted to. I'd left my real car, a Tesla Model S that I'd bought in cash because I could, parked in my Manhattan garage. No point giving them more ammunition about how I was putting on airs or trying to be fancy. God forbid Emily actually succeed at something. The house looked exactly the same as it had since I was 12. Same peeling paint on the shutters, same cracked driveway that Dad always said he'd fix next summer. Some things never change. Unlike my bank account. Mom answered the door with that particular smile she reserved for when she was trying to be supportive, but didn't quite know how. You know the one. It's like she's proud of you for showing up, but worried you're about to ask for money. Emily! Oh, honey, you look thin. Are you eating enough? Classic mom. Within 30 seconds, she'd managed to both hug me and imply I was probably starving myself to afford my lifestyle choices. I'm eating fine. Mom, actually, I've been eating really well lately. If by really well you mean I can literally afford to eat anywhere I want, then yeah, I was doing great. Sarah was already at the kitchen table with her perfect family. Husband, who's also in healthcare, 2 kids who apparently inherited the family talent for being impressive. Emily, oh my gosh, it's been forever! She jumped up to hug me, and I could see her doing that quick scan thing. You know, checking to see if I looked successful or like I was still struggling. Mark strolled in wearing his lawyer uniform, expensive shirt, perfectly pressed pants, that watch he bought to make sure everyone knew he was successful. Well, the prodigal daughter returns. How's the Big Apple treating you? Can't complain, I said, which was true. I really couldn't complain about anything these days. How's the law practice? Busy, really busy. Just closed a huge case last month. Settlement was... He launched into this story about his latest victory, because Mark couldn't just say hello without reminding everyone how successful he was. I nodded along, thinking about how his biggest settlement would barely cover my quarterly tax payment. But sure, Mark, tell me more about your huge case. Dad appeared from the living room, already looking stressed. The family business, a small construction company, had been struggling for years. I could tell from his face that things hadn't improved. Emily, good to see you made it. Wouldn't miss it, I said, which was only partially true. I'd actually considered skipping this year, but something made me want to come home. Maybe I missed them, despite everything. Or maybe I was curious to see if anything had changed. Spoiler alert, it hadn't. Within the first hour, I'd already heard about Mark's promotion, Sarah's latest nursing award, and the kids' honor roll achievements. When anyone asked about my life, the conversation lasted maybe 30 seconds before someone changed the subject. So, Emily, how's school? Mom asked while setting the table. Actually, I graduated last year. I've been working on my... Sarah, can you check on the turkey? Dad interrupted. And just like that, my attempt to share news about my life evaporated into thin air. This was the family dynamic I remembered. Emily speaks, family moves on. Emily tries to contribute, family finds something more important to discuss. It was like being a background character in my own life story. But here's what they didn't know. I wasn't that same desperate college kid anymore. I wasn't the one who needed their approval or their financial support or their validation. I was here by choice, not necessity. I was here because I wanted to be, not because I had nowhere else to go. That should have made me feel better. Instead, it just made the whole thing more depressing. I didn't need them anymore, but I still wanted them to care. And they still didn't. The evening continued with the same patterns. Mark dominated conversations about his successes. Sarah shared updates about her perfect family. The kids were adorable and accomplished. Dad complained about work stress. Mom worried about everyone. And Emily? Well, Emily just listened. Because apparently that's all Emily was good for. Tomorrow was Thanksgiving dinner, the real test. I had no idea I was about to fail it spectacularly. Thanksgiving morning started with Mom having what I can only describe as a controlled panic attack. She'd been cooking since dawn, and by 10 a.m. she was already overwhelmed, sweating, and muttering about how nothing was going according to plan. The rolls aren't rising right, she announced to no one in particular. The turkey's taking forever, and I still haven't made the gravy. Sarah was dealing with her kids, who were apparently going through their I hate everything phase. Mark was on his phone handling some work crisis because even on holidays, Mark had to remind everyone how important he was. Dad was hiding in the living room watching football, so naturally Emily stepped in to help, because that's what Emily does. Mom, why don't you sit down for a minute? You look exhausted. I moved toward the stove where she was frantically stirring 3 different pots. Let me take over for a bit. Oh, honey, you don't have to. I want to help. You're doing too much. I gently guided her toward a kitchen chair. Just tell me what needs to happen next. For a moment, it felt like old times. Me and Mom in the kitchen, working together, talking about nothing important. She started to relax, even smiled when I managed to save her gravy from becoming cement. You always were good in the kitchen, she said. Remember when you used to help me make Christmas cookies? I did remember. Back when I was little and they still seemed to enjoy having me around. Back before I became the family disappointment. I still bake sometimes, I told her. My apartment has a great kitchen. My apartment that could fit their entire house inside it. But who's counting? Everything was going smoothly until Dad walked into the kitchen. Have you ever experienced something so publicly humiliating that you felt like you were watching it happen to someone else? Comment below if you've ever been completely mortified by the people who were supposed to love you most. Dad had been drinking. Not drunk, but definitely not sober. The construction business problems were clearly weighing on him, and the holidays always made him more volatile. He took one look at me standing at the stove, then at Mom sitting at the table, and his whole face changed. What's this? His voice had that dangerous edge I remembered from childhood. You letting her take over now? Mom tried to defuse the situation. Emily was just helping. I don't remember asking for your opinion. His eyes never left my face. You think you can just walk in here and start running things? I stayed calm. The old Emily would have backed down immediately, started apologizing, tried to make peace. But the new Emily, the one who'd built a multi-million-dollar company from nothing, had learned a few things about standing her ground. I was just helping Mom with dinner, that's all. That's all? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You show up once a year, contribute nothing to this family, and think you can just start giving orders? The kitchen had gone silent. Even from the living room, I could sense everyone listening. Mark and Sarah had stopped whatever they were doing. The kids were quiet. I wasn't giving orders. I was making gravy. You were making gravy, he repeated, like I'd claimed to be performing brain surgery. In my kitchen, in my house, with my food. This was escalating fast, and I knew I should back down, should apologize, should just let it go because it wasn't worth the fight. But something inside me refused to bend this time. Your house that I grew up in, your family that I'm part of, your daughter who was trying to help. My voice stayed level, but there was steel in it now. I didn't realize helping was such a crime. That's when he exploded. Don't you dare get smart with me, his voice boomed through the house. You think because you went to some fancy school in New York that you're better than us? You think you can come back here and show us all how it's done? I felt the old familiar shame trying to creep up my spine. The feeling of being small, of being wrong, of being too much trouble for everyone. But it couldn't reach me anymore. I think I was making gravy, I said quietly. You don't think. That's your problem. You never think. His face was getting red now. You just do whatever you want. Expect everyone else to deal with the consequences. Mom tried again. Please, let's just... No. Dad's voice cut through hers like a blade. I'm tired of walking on eggshells around her. Tired of pretending like she hasn't been a burden on this family for years. The words hit me like physical blows. Burden. The thing I'd feared being my entire life. The thing I'd worked so hard to never be again. I haven't asked you for anything in over 2 years, I said. Because you know we don't have it, he shouted. Because you know your choices put us in a position where we can't help you anymore. My choices. Like getting an education was something I'd done to personally hurt him. Mark appeared in the doorway, but he didn't come to my defense. Sarah hovered behind him, looking uncomfortable but silent. Mom sat at the table with tears in her eyes, but she didn't speak up either. I was completely alone, and that's when it hit me. I wasn't the problem here. I never had been. You want to know what your problem is? Emily? Dad was just getting started, his voice carrying through the whole house. You've always thought you were too good for us. Too good for this family, too good for this town, too good for reality. I stood there holding a wooden spoon covered in gravy, thinking about how surreal this moment was. 3 days ago, I'd signed a contract worth $8 million. This morning, I'd checked my investment portfolio over coffee. It was up another 100,000 since last week. And here was my father, lecturing me about reality. You moved to New York thinking you were going to be somebody special, he continued. Well, guess what? You're not special. You're just another small-town girl who bit off more than she could chew. The kitchen felt like it was shrinking around us. I could hear Mark shifting uncomfortably in the doorway. Sarah was probably dying of secondhand embarrassment. Mom looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. And now you come back here, Dad pressed on, acting like you know better than everyone else, looking down on the people who raised you, who sacrificed for you. That's when something inside me snapped. Not into anger. I was past anger. Into clarity. What exactly did you sacrifice for me? The question came out calmer than I felt. I'm genuinely curious. Dad blinked, thrown off by the tone. He'd been expecting me to cry or argue back or apologize. Instead, I was asking for specifics. We put you through college. You co-signed a loan that I've been paying back myself, I corrected. Every penny. With interest. I've never missed a payment. We gave you a place to live growing up. You mean you housed your own child? Wow. Father of the Year? Sarah gasped a little at my sarcasm, but I was done pretending this was normal parenting. We fed you, clothed you, basic legal requirements for having children, I said. What else? Dad's mouth opened and closed like a fish. He'd never actually been asked to itemize his parental contributions before. Don't get smart with me, he said finally, falling back on his default threat. I'm not getting smart with you. I'm asking what you sacrificed. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you provided the absolute minimum required by law, then spent my entire childhood making me feel guilty for existing. The silence in that kitchen was deafening. That's enough, Mom said quietly, but she wasn't looking at Dad. She was looking at me. Emily, that's enough. And there it was. Even when Dad was being completely unreasonable, even when he was humiliating me in front of the whole family, Somehow I was still the problem for defending myself. "You're right," I said, setting down the spoon. "It is enough." I turned to leave the kitchen, but Dad wasn't done. "Where do you think you're going?" "Upstairs to get my things." "Good. Maybe it's time you learn to stand on your own 2 feet instead of running back here every time life gets hard." I stopped walking, turned around, looked him straight in the eye. "You think I came here because I needed something from you? Didn't you?" I almost laughed. Almost told him right there about the company, about the contracts, about the money. Almost explained that I could buy his struggling construction business without blinking and turn it into something actually successful. Instead, I just said, "No, Dad. I came here because I thought maybe you'd missed me." His face went blank. "I thought maybe after 3 years, you might actually want to know how I'm doing, what I've accomplished, who I've become." I picked up my purse from the counter. "But you don't, do you? You don't want to know anything about my life unless it's bad news you can use to prove I'm a failure." "Emily," Mom started. "It's okay, Mom. I get it now." I headed for the stairs. "I finally understand." "Understand what?" Dad called after me. I paused at the bottom of the staircase. "That I've been trying to earn something you were never going to give me." 20 minutes later, I was throwing my clothes into my suitcase, listening to the muffled sounds of family discussion downstairs. Nobody came up to check on me. Nobody knocked on my door to see if I was okay. Sarah appeared just as I was zipping up my bag. "Emily, don't leave like this," she said. "You know how Dad gets when he's stressed about work. He doesn't mean it." "Yes, he does." I pulled my suitcase off the bed. "And you know what? That's fine. People are allowed to not like me, but they're not allowed to treat me like garbage. He's your father. He's a man who provided DNA and a roof. That doesn't give him the right to humiliate me." Sarah blocked the doorway. "So you're just going to leave? Run away again?" "I'm not running away, Sarah. I'm leaving a situation where I'm not wanted." I met her eyes. "There's a difference." She stepped aside, but her expression said everything I needed to know. In Sarah's mind, this was Emily being dramatic again. Emily causing problems. Emily not knowing her place. I walked downstairs with my suitcase, through the living room where Mark was pretending to watch football, past the kitchen where Mom and Dad had resumed their argument in hushed tones. Nobody tried to stop me. Nobody asked me to stay. Nobody said they were sorry. I put my bag in the Honda, started the engine, and drove away from the house where I'd grown up feeling like a stranger. But here's the thing they didn't know. I wasn't driving back to some tiny apartment to cry myself to sleep. I was driving back to a life they couldn't even imagine. The 6-hour drive back to Manhattan gave me plenty of time to think. And by the time I pulled into my building's garage, I'd made peace with what happened. You can't miss something you never actually had, right? I'd left my real phone in my apartment, the one connected to all my business accounts, and grabbed it as soon as I walked through the door. 17 missed calls. All business, of course. Even on Thanksgiving, cybercriminals don't take breaks. My apartment felt like stepping into a different world. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, kitchen bigger than my parents' living room, art on the walls that cost more than most people's cars. This was my real life, the one my family knew nothing about. I poured myself a glass of wine that cost more than their Thanksgiving dinner and settled into my home office to catch up on work. Carter Digital Security had 3 major contracts in the pipeline, and my team had been handling things perfectly while I was gone. That's when my assistant Rebecca called. "Emily, thank God you're back. I know you said no business calls during family time, but we've got a situation." "What kind of situation?" "The good kind. You remember that retail chain that got hacked 6 months ago? The one where we completely rebuilt their security infrastructure?" I remembered. It had been a challenging project, but we'd not only fixed their problems, we'd prevented 3 more attempts since then. Their parent company wants to hire us for a complete security overhaul, all 847 stores, international locations included. I nearly dropped my wine. "All of them?" "All of them. They want to start with a 12-month contract, with options to extend. Emily, this is huge. This would make us one of the top cybersecurity firms in the country. The contract value would be around $15 million for a company I'd started in my dorm room 3 years ago. "Set up a meeting for Monday," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Full presentation, all department heads. Already done. Monday at 10. After I hung up, I sat in my office chair, staring out at the city lights. My family thought I was some struggling student who couldn't make it in the real world. Meanwhile, I was about to sign a contract that would establish me as a major player in a billion-dollar industry. The irony was almost funny. Almost. My landline rang, and I stared at it for a moment before remembering I'd given the bank that number as my emergency contact. I'd been staying at my parents' house all week, so I'd updated my contact information to their number, thinking if anything urgent came up, they could relay the message. I answered on the 3rd ring. "Hello?" Miss Carter, this is David Chen from Madison Trust Bank. I'm calling because we have your parents' number listed as your emergency contact, and we received some concerning activity alerts on your accounts. My blood went cold. What kind of activity? Nothing unauthorized, he said quickly. But we had several large transactions today, and our system flagged them for verification. A wire transfer to your investment account for $8.5 million, the retail contract advance payment. Right, the advance payment I'd authorized yesterday for the new contract. In all the family drama, I'd completely forgotten about it. That's correct, I said. I authorized that transfer. Perfect. And the automatic investment allocation went through as scheduled. Your portfolio is now just over $25 million. I'm sorry. What now? 25 million? Could you repeat that? Your total investment portfolio, as of market close today, is valued at $25.3 million. I'd known I was doing well. I'd known the company was growing fast. But $25 million? When had that happened? Thank you for confirming, David continued. Oh, and I should mention, we called your emergency contact number earlier to verify the wire transfer, but whoever answered seemed confused about the amounts involved. My stomach dropped. You called my parents' house? Yes, we spoke with someone who identified himself as your father. Is that correct? Yes. That's correct. My mind was racing. Dad had answered a call from my bank about a wire transfer for $8.5 million. He seemed surprised by the amount, so we assured him this was routine for your account level. I hope we didn't cause any family concerns. Family concerns? If David only knew. No concerns, I managed. Thank you for calling. After I hung up, I sat there in stunned silence. My father, the man who'd spent the day telling me I was a failure, had just learned I was worth more money than he could probably comprehend. My phone started ringing almost immediately. Not my business line, my personal cell. Emily? Dad's voice was different, shaky. Honey, your bank called. Honey. He hadn't called me honey in years. I heard. They said something about millions? He sounded like he was trying to convince himself he'd heard wrong. 8 million? The wire transfer was for $8.5 million. Yes. Silence. Long, heavy silence. Emily, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. What exactly do you do for work? For the first time in my adult life, my father was asking about my career, not dismissing it, not changing the subject, actually asking. I run a cybersecurity company, I said. We protect businesses from hackers. And it's worth millions? The contract I signed yesterday is worth $15 million over 12 months. More silence. Jesus Christ, Emily. Yeah. Why didn't you tell us? And there it was. The question I'd been waiting for someone to ask for 3 years. Why didn't I tell you? I repeated Dad's question, settling deeper into my leather chair. Through my floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan sparkled like a circuit board. When exactly should I have mentioned it? What do you mean? I mean, when in the last 3 years did anyone in this family ask about my work in a way that suggested you actually wanted to hear the answer? The silence stretched between us. I could practically hear him thinking, trying to remember a single conversation where he'd shown genuine interest in my life. Emily, Dad, this morning you told me I'd never amount to anything. Yesterday, when I mentioned work, Mark changed the subject within 30 seconds. Last Christmas. When I tried to explain what I do, Mom asked if I was finally ready to come home and find a real job. We didn't know you were successful? The word hung in the air. Right. Because successful Emily doesn't fit the family narrative, does it? I could hear him moving around, probably pacing their kitchen. The same kitchen where he'd humiliated me just hours earlier. Emily, listen. About earlier today, what? You're sorry? Or you're sorry I have money now? That's not fair. Fair? I almost laughed. Dad, you literally told me to get out and go beg on the street, in front of the entire family, and nobody said a word to defend me. You were being disrespectful. I was making gravy. My voice stayed calm, but I felt the old anger trying to surface. I was helping Mom with dinner, and you turned it into an excuse to tear me down, like always. Another long pause. When he spoke again, his voice was smaller. How long have you had money? A while. How much money, Emily? This was the moment. I could downplay it, make it seem like less than it was, keep him comfortable, or I could tell him the truth and watch his entire worldview shift. According to my investment portfolio, about $25 million. I heard something crash in the background, probably a glass or a plate. 25 million? Give or take. Dollars? Yes, Dad, dollars. The sound that came through the phone wasn't quite a laugh and wasn't quite a sob. It was the sound of a man's understanding of reality completely reorganizing itself. Emily, I don't understand. How is that possible? For the first time in our conversation, he sounded genuinely curious instead of defensive. So I told him. I told him about the company I'd built from nothing, about the clients who trusted me with their most sensitive data, about the contracts worth millions, the employees who depended on me, the innovations we'd pioneered. I told him about working 18-hour days while other students partied, about learning programming languages like other people learned to speak French, about the first time someone paid me 6 figures for a month's work and I cried in my apartment bathroom because I couldn't believe it was real. I told him about the respect I'd earned in an industry full of people who'd initially dismissed me as just another kid from nowhere, about the invitations to speak at conferences, the articles written about my company, the competitors trying to poach my employees because everyone knew Carter Digital was the future of cybersecurity. And you did all this while we thought you were struggling in school? I graduated summa cum laude, Dad. Dean's List every semester. I told Mom that in a letter 2 years ago. I don't think she mentioned it. Of course she didn't. Good news about Emily's life wasn't worth sharing. Emily, why didn't you tell us? Why let us think you were barely making it? This was the heart of it. The question I'd been asking myself for months. Because you never asked. Because every time I tried to share good news, someone changed the subject. Because you were also invested in me being the family failure that success didn't fit the story you wanted to tell. That's not true, isn't it? I pulled up my laptop and scrolled through my photos. Dad, I have pictures of myself meeting with CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. I have awards from industry organizations. I have employees who consider me one of the most innovative leaders they've ever worked for. And until today, my own father thought I was a burden who couldn't make it in the real world. He was quiet for a long time. Emily, he said finally, I think I made a mistake. A mistake? Maybe. Maybe more than one mistake. I looked out at the city that had become my home, the place where people knew my worth, where my voice mattered, where I'd built something extraordinary from nothing. Dad, I need you to understand something. I didn't achieve all this to prove you wrong. I achieved it because I wanted to build something meaningful. The fact that you couldn't see my potential isn't my failure. It's yours. I know, he whispered. And I need you to understand something else. This conversation we're having right now, the fact that you're finally asking about my life, it's not happening because I've changed. It's happening because you found out I have money. Emily, I was the same person this morning when you threw me out. The same person yesterday when nobody wanted to hear about my work. The same person I've been for 3 years while you all treated me like I was disappointing you by existing. The line went quiet again. What happens now? He asked. I looked around my apartment, my sanctuary, my proof that dreams aren't fantasies if you're willing to work for them. Now I go back to my life, I said. The one I built while you weren't paying attention. And us? The family? For the first time since answering his call, I smiled, not because I was happy, but because I finally understood something I'd been trying to figure out for years. Dad, you can't miss something you never actually had. The messages started the next morning. I was reviewing quarterly reports over coffee when my phone lit up with notifications. Not from clients or employees, from family members who hadn't texted me in months. Emily, hope you're doing well. Would love to catch up soon. Sarah. Hey sis, been thinking about you. Maybe we can grab lunch when you're back in town. Mark. Honey, your father told me about your success. We're so proud. Love. Mom. Proud. Now they were proud. I set my phone aside and tried to focus on work, but the messages kept coming. Suddenly, everyone wanted to reconnect and celebrate my achievements and make sure I knew how much I meant to them. Funny how meaningful I became once they knew my net worth. By noon, I had 12 texts, 4 missed calls, and an email from Mark suggesting we discuss some investment opportunities that might interest me. Because, of course, this was really about what I could do for them, not them wanting to repair our relationship. The final straw came when Sarah called while I was in a client meeting. Emily, oh my God, I had no idea you were doing so well. Her voice was that particular brand of fake excitement people use when they want something. Why didn't you tell us? I tried to tell you, I said, stepping out of the conference room. Multiple times. Well, you should have been clearer. Anyway, listen, Tom and I have been looking at houses, and we found this amazing place. But we need help with the down payment. Since you're doing so well, there it was. Less than 24 hours after learning about my success, and Sarah was already asking for money. How much help? I asked, curious to see how far this would go. Just 50,000. I know that sounds like a lot, but for someone in your position, it's probably nothing, right? $50,000. Probably nothing. Like I was some kind of human ATM. Sarah, you haven't asked how I'm doing personally in over a year. You don't know if I'm happy, if I'm healthy, if I'm in a relationship, but you know exactly how much money you need from me. Emily, don't be dramatic. Family helps family. Where was family when Dad was humiliating me yesterday? Where was family when I tried to share my successes and got ignored? Where was family every time I needed emotional support instead of financial support? Silence. Because Sarah didn't have an answer for that. Look, she said finally. I know things got heated yesterday, but Dad feels terrible about that. We all do. Maybe this is a chance for us to start over. Start over. Right. Now that they knew what I was worth. After I hung up, I sat in my office staring at my computer screen. Everything was becoming crystal clear. They didn't want a relationship with Emily the person. They wanted access to Emily the bank account. But here's what they didn't understand about money. It doesn't change who people are. It just reveals who they always were. Dad called that evening, his voice careful and measured. Emily, I've been thinking about our conversation last night. And I think maybe I owe you an apology. Maybe I've been too hard on you over the years. Too hard. Like systematically destroying my self-esteem was just being a little strict. Dad, what do you want? I want to make things right between us. You're my daughter, and I love you. The words should have meant something, should have felt like healing. Instead, they felt empty, performative, like lines he'd rehearsed. When's the last time you said you loved me? I asked. What do you mean? Before yesterday? Before you knew about my money? When's the last time you told me you loved me? The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Emily, that's not fair. It's a simple question with a simple answer. Either you can remember or you can't. More silence. I've always loved you, he said finally. Even when I was frustrated with your choices. Choices. There was that word again, like my dreams had been personal attacks against him. Dad, I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Okay. If I told you right now that I'd lost all my money, that the company failed, that I was broke and struggling, would you still want this relationship? The pause was just a beat too long. Of course I would, but we both knew he was lying. What do you think will happen next? Drop your predictions in the comments below, and make sure you're subscribed because Emily's about to make a decision that changes everything. I spent the weekend thinking about that pause. Just one beat of hesitation, but it told me everything I needed to know. Monday morning brought more family outreach. A card from Mom with a check for $500 to help with expenses. Help with expenses. Like I was still that struggling college student. Mark sent a formal email, because Mark makes everything formal, outlining an investment opportunity with his law firm. They needed capital to expand, and he thought it would be perfect for someone in my position. Even my cousin Lisa, who I hadn't heard from in 3 years, suddenly wanted to reconnect, and mentioned that her startup was looking for angel investors. It was like watching vultures circle. Everyone suddenly remembered they had a relationship with Emily Carter, successful entrepreneur. Nobody seemed to remember Emily Carter, the person they'd spent years making feel worthless. That's when I made my first decision. I called my assistant. Rebecca, I need you to do something for me. Of course. I want you to set up a separate business line. New number. Only give it to current clients and potential business contacts. My personal number is about to become complicated. Family issues? Rebecca had worked for me for 2 years. She'd seen me take calls from my parents that left me upset and distracted. She'd watched me try to explain my successes to family members who couldn't be bothered to listen. Something like that. Next, I called my lawyer. If I was going to cut financial ties with people who only valued me for money, I needed to do it properly. Diana, I need to restructure some things. Set up a trust fund. What kind of trust fund? The kind that can't be touched by anyone but me. No family access. No emergency provisions. Nothing that gives anyone else control over my assets. Emily, this sounds serious. Is everything okay? Diana had helped me set up Carter Digital Security. She'd seen me build something extraordinary from nothing. She deserved an explanation. My family just found out about my financial success, I said. And suddenly everyone wants a relationship. Ah. Diana's voice carried understanding. She'd seen this before. How much notice are they giving you about their newfound love? About 24 hours. That might be a record. Most people wait at least a week before asking for money. We spent an hour setting up legal protections. Trusts, LLCs, corporate structures that would make it impossible for anyone to access my assets without my explicit consent. Emily, Diana said as we finished, I'm going to ask you something as your friend, not your lawyer. Go ahead. Are you sure this is what you want? Sometimes family relationships can heal, given time. I thought about that pause in Dad's voice. About Sarah asking for $50,000 without asking how I was. About Mark's business proposal disguised as brotherly concern. Diana, What's the difference between love and opportunism? Love puts the person first. Opportunism puts the benefit first. Then I'm sure. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went out with friends. Real friends. People who'd known me before the money, who'd celebrated my successes because they genuinely cared about my happiness. We went to this little restaurant in Soho where I'd taken my first business client 3 years ago, back when a $100 dinner felt like a huge splurge. "You've been weird all week," my friend Alex said over appetizers. "What's going on?" I told them about Thanksgiving, about the family drama, about the sudden flood of interest once everyone learned about my net worth. "Wait," said my friend Jordan, nearly choking on her wine. "Your own father didn't know you were successful?" "None of them did." "How is that possible?" "Emily, you're constantly getting featured in business publications. Your company has been in Forbes twice." They never asked, and when I tried to tell them, they changed the subject. My friends exchanged looks. The kind of looks that said they were trying to be supportive but also couldn't comprehend this level of family dysfunction. "So what are you going to do?" Alex asked. "I'm going to let them show me who they really are," I said. "And then, I'm going to decide whether those are the kind of people I want in my life. And if they fail the test?" I looked around the restaurant at people living their lives, pursuing their dreams, building relationships based on mutual respect and genuine care. Then I'll keep building my real family, the one that actually wants me to succeed. When I got home that night, there were 6 new messages waiting for me. All family, all variations of the same theme. "We should get together soon," and "I've been thinking about you," and "maybe you could help with." I deleted them all. For the first time in years, my phone felt light in my hand, but I wasn't done testing them yet. Wednesday morning, I decided to conduct an experiment. I posted on social media. The first time I'd posted anything personal in months. Just a simple photo of my breakfast with the caption, "Grateful for quiet mornings and good coffee." Within an hour, I had responses from Mark, Sarah, and 3 cousins I hadn't heard from since high school graduation. All sudden, enthusiastic engagement with my supposedly fascinating breakfast routine. The same people who'd ignored my posts about business achievements for 3 years were now deeply invested in my morning beverage choices. Then I posted something different. A throwback photo from college with the caption, "Missing those simple days when ramen noodles felt like a luxury." Radio silence. The experiment was working perfectly. They were only interested in Emily the successful entrepreneur, not Emily the human being with memories and experiences worth sharing. That afternoon, Mom called. "Emily, honey, I saw your post about missing college. You know, if you ever need anything..." "Need anything like what, Mom?" "Well, if the business ever has problems or if you need somewhere to stay, your room is always here for you." My room. The same room where I'd cried myself to sleep hundreds of times because nothing I did was ever good enough for this family. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "What's my favorite color?" "Your favorite color?" She sounded confused by the question. "Well, Blue? It's green, forest green. Has been since I was 8. "Oh, well, green then." "What's my biggest fear?" "Emily, why are you asking these questions?" "Because I want to know if you actually know me as a person, or if you just know me as your daughter who has money now." Silence. "Of course I know you as a person." "Then answer the question. What's my biggest fear?" More silence. "I don't know," she admitted quietly. "It's being invisible," I said. "My biggest fear is being invisible to the people who are supposed to love me most." "Emily." "Mom, you don't know my favorite color, my biggest fear, what I like to do for fun, whether I'm dating anyone, what my hopes are, what makes me happy, or what keeps me awake at night. But you know exactly what my bank balance is." The conversation ended soon after that. What was there to say? Thursday brought an email from Dad. The subject line was, "Investment opportunity." He'd attached a business proposal for a construction company expansion, professional letterhead, financial projections, the works. He wanted me to invest $2 million in his struggling business. $2 million. From the man who told me to go beg in the street 5 days earlier. But here's what really got me. The email was addressed to Ms. Carter, CEO of Carter Digital Security, not Dear Emily or Dear Daughter. He was literally treating me like a business contact instead of his child. I forwarded the email to Diana. Her response came back in minutes. "Emily, this is disturbing. He's essentially trying to monetize your relationship. Also, these financials look terrible. Don't invest a penny." That evening, I made another decision. I was going to call a family meeting. Not to reconcile, I was past that point, but to make my position clear once and for all. "I want to see everyone this weekend," I told Sarah when she called to check on whether I'd considered her house down payment request. "Really?" Emily, that's wonderful. I knew you'd come around. Come around. Like I was the one who'd been unreasonable. I'll drive down Saturday morning. Can you get everyone together for lunch? Of course. Oh, Emily, I'm so glad we're finally going to be a real family again. A real family. We'd never been a real family. We'd been a group of people related by blood who occasionally occupied the same space while maintaining completely separate emotional lives. But I didn't say that to Sarah. I'd save it for Saturday. Friday night, I sat in my apartment looking out at the city I'd conquered. Tomorrow, I was going to drive back to Pennsylvania one last time. Not as the desperate daughter begging for approval, but as the successful woman I'd become despite them. I was going to give them one final chance to show me who they really were. And then I was going to make my choice permanent. Saturday morning, I did something I'd never done before. I drove home in my real car. The Tesla Model S glided down the Pennsylvania highway like a spaceship among pickup trucks. I'd spent 3 years hiding my success, driving my old Honda whenever I visited family. Not anymore. If they wanted to see successful Emily, they were going to see all of her. I pulled into my parents' driveway and watched the curtains move in the front window. Mom's face appeared, then disappeared quickly. 30 seconds later, the front door opened. Emily! Mom rushed out, but her eyes weren't on me. They were on the car. Oh my goodness, is this yours? Every penny, I said, climbing out. Bought it with my first $1,000,000. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. Sarah's minivan pulled up behind me, and I watched through the windshield as her jaw dropped. Mark's BMW looked like a toy car next to the Tesla. Jesus Christ, Emily, Mark said, walking around the car like he was examining a museum exhibit. How much did this cost? More than your law school loans, I replied pleasantly. We gathered in the living room where I'd spent my childhood feeling small and wrong. Now, sitting in my tailored jacket and designer jeans, I felt like a different species than these people. Emily, Dad said, settling into his favorite chair, we're all so happy you came home. Home. This hadn't felt like home in years. Actually, Dad, I came here to talk to you all about something important. Everyone perked up. I could practically see the dollar signs in their eyes. I've been thinking about family, about what it means, about what we expect from each other. That's wonderful, Mom said. We've all been thinking about that too. Good. So let me ask you all something. I looked around the room at faces that shared my genetics, but felt like strangers. What do you think I need from this family? Well, Sarah said carefully, we all need emotional support, love, understanding. Right. And what do you think this family needs from me? The silence was telling. Emily, Mark said finally, we just want you to be happy. Is that why you sent me a business proposal asking for $2 million, Dad? Dad's face flushed. That was just an opportunity I thought you might be interested in. As your daughter or as an investor? Both. Wrong answer. I stood up and pulled out my phone. I'm going to show you all something. I scrolled to my banking app and turned the screen so they could all see it. The number at the top was bigger than any of them had imagined. Sarah gasped. Mark's eyes went wide. Mom covered her mouth. This is how much money I have, I said calmly. All of it earned through my own work, my own intelligence, my own determination. None of you helped me earn this. None of you believed I could do it. And none of you celebrated when I did. Emily, Dad started. But the moment you found out about it, you all suddenly wanted a relationship. Mark wanted business partnerships. Sarah needed house money. Dad pitched me investment opportunities. Mom started sending checks like I was still that broke college student. I put my phone away. Here's what I've realized. You don't love me. You love what I can do for you. That's not true, Mom said, tears starting. We've always loved you. Mom, until last week. You couldn't remember the last time you told me you were proud of me, but you can remember exactly how much money you think I should contribute to Sarah's down payment. The room was completely silent now. So I'm going to make this simple for everyone, I continued. I'm removing myself from this family. You can't just stop being family, Sarah said, her voice rising. Watch me. I walked to the mantel where family photos had sat for decades. My graduation picture was nowhere to be seen, but there were plenty of Mark and Sarah's accomplishments on display. I'm changing my emergency contact information. I'm setting up trusts that prevent any of you from accessing my assets. And I'm moving forward with my life as if none of you exist. Emily, please, Dad said, his voice breaking. We can work this out. We can be better. You've had 27 years to be better, I said. This is who you are, and I'm finally accepting it. I walked toward the door, then turned back one last time. For what it's worth, I would have given you anything if you'd just loved me for who I was instead of what I had. But you made your choice. Now I'm making mine. The sound of the door closing behind me felt like the period at the end of a very long, painful sentence. I drove straight back to Manhattan that afternoon, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt genuinely free. Monday morning brought exactly what I expected: a flood of desperate messages. "Emily, please don't make any hasty decisions," from Mom. "We need to talk about this rationally," from Mark. "You're breaking up the family over money," from Sarah. Even my aunts and uncles started reaching out, apparently having received detailed briefings on my financial situation and my unreasonable behavior. But here's the thing about cutting toxic people out of your life. The relief is immediate and profound. I threw myself into work with renewed energy. The $15 million contract was progressing ahead of schedule. 2 new clients had signed on based on referrals. My team was growing, and industry recognition was pouring in. Wednesday brought a surprise I wasn't expecting. "Emily," Rebecca knocked on my office door. "There's someone here to see you." "She says she's your aunt?" I looked up from my computer. "I don't have any appointments scheduled." "She doesn't have an appointment. She says it's a family emergency." Family emergency. The favorite manipulation tactic of people who've run out of other options. "Send her in." My Aunt Patricia walked into my office wearing the same worried expression she'd worn when I was 8 and had supposedly embarrassed the family by crying at my grandfather's funeral. "Emily, honey, we need to talk." "About what?" "About this situation with your parents. You're destroying the family." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Aunt Patricia, let me ask you something. When did you last visit me? When did you last call to see how I was doing? When did you last show any interest in my life?" She shifted uncomfortably. "Well, we all have busy lives. I'll tell you when. Never. But the moment my parents told everyone about my money, suddenly you're concerned about family unity. Emily, that's not fair." "Fair?" I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. You know what's not fair? I have 237 business contacts in this phone. People who respect my work, value my input, and celebrate my successes. But I don't have a single family member who's ever called just to see if I was happy. Aunt Patricia's face flushed. "We're family. It's different." "You're right. It is different. Family should be better." She tried a different approach. "Emily, your father is having health problems. The stress of this situation is affecting his heart. His heart problems started long before last weekend. They're related to his business stress, his drinking, and his refusal to take care of himself, not to my setting boundaries." "But you could help him. I could give him money." "You mean?" "Yes. You have so much. And he needs so little." There it was. The core belief that my role in this family was to be the solution to everyone else's problems. "Aunt Patricia, I want you to listen carefully to what I'm about to say." She nodded. "I built a multi-million-dollar company from nothing. I employ 37 people. I've been featured in Forbes, Harvard Business Review, and TechCrunch. I've spoken at conferences around the world. I've revolutionized cybersecurity protocols for major corporations. I stood up and walked to the window overlooking the city where I'd proven myself. But not one person in my family has ever asked me about any of that. Not one person has ever expressed pride in what I've accomplished. Not one person has ever celebrated my success or supported my dreams or even bothered to understand what I do for a living." I turned back to face her. "The only thing anyone wants to know is how much money I have and how much of it I'm willing to share. That's not family, Aunt Patricia. That's a pyramid scheme." She was quiet for a long moment. "What if things change? What if everyone starts being more supportive? Change because they want to, or change because they need my money?" Another long pause. "Emily, even if you're right about everything, even if we've all been terrible, don't you think forgiveness is important? Don't you think family should get another chance?" I considered the question seriously. Did they deserve forgiveness? Did I owe them another chance? "Aunt Patricia, I forgave them years ago. Every slight, every dismissal, every time they made me feel worthless. I forgave it all because I thought that's what family was supposed to do." I sat back down at my desk. But forgiveness doesn't mean continuing to subject yourself to abuse. It doesn't mean pretending toxic behavior is normal, and it doesn't mean giving people unlimited chances to hurt you. So that's it? You're just going to cut us all off? I'm going to focus on the people who actually want me in their lives. The people who knew my worth before they knew my net worth. After she left, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about the conversation. Was I being too harsh? Too unforgiving? Then I thought about my team, about my friends, about the business relationships I'd built on mutual respect and genuine care, about the life I'd created where my value wasn't conditional on what I could provide for other people. And I realized something profound. I wasn't cutting family out of my life. I was making room for real family to enter it. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my new apartment, a penthouse overlooking Central Park that I bought because I love the view. Not because I needed to impress anyone. My company just signed its biggest contract ever, a 3-year deal worth $47 million. Forbes called me one of the 30 under 30 tech leaders to watch. Harvard Business School wants me to guest lecture. And you know what? I haven't talked to my blood family in months. At first, the messages continued. Guilt trips, manipulation, accusations that I was selfish and heartless. But eventually, even they got tired of sending messages I never answered. The final communication came from Mark 3 weeks ago. A formal letter from his law firm threatening legal action if I didn't honor family obligations. I forwarded it to Diana, who responded with a letter so professionally devastating that I haven't heard from any of them since. Apparently, threatening to sue someone for not giving you money is frowned upon by the legal community. Who knew? But here's what they never understood. Cutting them out didn't make my life smaller. It made it bigger. Last month, I started a mentorship program for young women in tech. I call it the Carter Foundation for Digital Innovation. We provide scholarships, internships, and support for girls who want to break into cybersecurity, but don't have the connections or resources. Our first scholarship recipient is Maria Rodriguez, a 19-year-old from Chicago who reminds me of myself at that age. She's brilliant, driven, and convinced she's not smart enough to succeed. I know that feeling. Ms. Carter, she said during our first meeting, I don't understand why you chose me. There were so many more qualified applicants. Maria, can I tell you something? The most qualified person isn't always the one with the best grades or the most advantages. Sometimes it's the one with the most determination to prove they belong. She smiled, and I saw something shift in her eyes. The same shift I'd felt when I finally realized my worth wasn't determined by other people's opinions. My real family now consists of people like Maria, like my team at Carter Digital, like my friends who celebrated with me when I bought the penthouse and didn't immediately ask if they could borrow money. Last weekend, Alex and Jordan threw me a surprise party for landing the $47 million contract. 30 people showed up. People who knew my journey, who'd supported my dreams, who genuinely cared about my happiness. Not one of them asked me for money. That's what real family looks like. I still think about my blood relatives sometimes. I wonder if Dad ever figured out that his health problems might improve if he stopped drinking and started exercising instead of waiting for his daughter to solve his financial stress with a check. I wonder if Mom ever realized that real mothers know their children's favorite colors. I wonder if Sarah and Mark ever stopped to consider that relationships require emotional investment, not just financial extraction. But mostly, I don't think about them at all, because I've learned something important. You can't miss something you never actually had. Real love doesn't come with price tags. Real family doesn't disappear when you set boundaries. Real relationships aren't contingent on your bank balance. And real success isn't just about money. It's about building a life where you're valued for who you are, not what you can provide. Tonight, I'm having dinner with Maria and 3 other scholarship recipients. We're going to that same little restaurant in Soho where I took my first business client. We'll talk about their dreams, their challenges, their plans to change the world. And not once will anyone ask me for anything except advice and encouragement. That's what family feels like. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories about finding your worth and building the life you deserve. Because sometimes the family that matters most isn't the one you're born into. It's the one you choose, the one that chooses you back.